It's a Heidelminicast. And now, Scott Clark.
You got some letters?
We do. Thank you very much, Mick. And this one comes from Jared in Claremont, Florida. He has a couple of questions about the second commandment and how it applies, and also what we should think about the Sabbath.
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
Need to open up the coffer. Somehow, last time, magically, I was able to read an email without opening the coffer. I can't explain it. Maybe it was a sign and wonder. I don't know. Just so you know, I did lay hands on a student last fall and heal him from hiccups. There were witnesses in class. Nobody taped it, but if you ask members of the class, that they will tell you that. I think it was last fall, could have been last spring, but it was recent. It happened. So we're not utterly devoid, we Reformed, of spiritual power, as some people count spiritual power. Okay, this is from Jared in Claremont, Florida, and he says, Reverend Dr. R. Scott Clark. Well, thank you very much. You can just call me Scott. That's fine. I have two questions. One, obviously, he writes, it's a violation of the second commandment to portray any member of the Godhead in a play, show, etc. Is it a violation? Hold on there. You have to stay up so I can see this. Is it a violation to read the Bible and when you get to a quote from God or Jesus, to put on a different voice and almost act it out in that way? I'm thinking about certain audio versions of the Bible, but also in private. And then the second question, concerning the Sabbath, should we observe the Sabbath from midnight to midnight Sunday or from sundown Saturday to sundown Sunday? All right, so first of all, on the second commandment, is it a violation to adopt a different voice when reading and when God is being quoted or when Jesus is being quoted? That is a question that I have never seriously considered. But as I did to think about this, it seems to me that it might be considered a little bit scrupulous to say that it is a violation of the second commandment. I think it might be a case here where we're using the wrong category. So rather than going to the second commandment here, because I agree with Jared, it is clearly a violation of the second commandment to represent any person of the deity, which is a good reminder after the holidays, after Christmas and so forth, when you are liable to see lots of portrayals, ostensible portrayals of God the Son incarnate. And just to refresh our memory, right, what does the second commandment say? I've got the Catechism. You can hear me turning pages. This is, well, as it's in this version, it's from the authorized version of the King James. So I'll just read it as it is. I think you can make sense of it. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. And then we have an exposition of the second commandment in Heidelberg, Lord's Day 35, 96, 97, 98 questions. This is question 96. What does God require in the second commandment? That we in no way make any image of God nor worship him in any other way than he has commanded us in his word. So it starts with the particular, no images, and then goes to the general principle that we nor worship him in any other way than he has commanded us in his word. That is known as the rule of worship, as Calvin put it, or the regulative principle, as it's often put now. Question 97, may we not make any image at all? God may not, and indeed cannot be imaged in any way. As for creatures, though they may indeed be imaged, yet God forbids the making or keeping of any likeness of them, either to worship them or to serve God by them. And then 98, but may not pictures be tolerated in churches as books for the people. And that's a quotation from the Middle Ages. And I can't remember off the top of my head which Roman bishop it was who said that we can use pictures as books for the people, that is, for people who are illiterate. But the answer is no, for we should not be wiser than God, who will not have his people taught by mute idols, but by the lively or living preaching of his word. Wiwa woke, in living word. So that stands for the Reformed consensus. That's the confession of the Reformed churches. You find the same teaching in the Westminster Standards and pretty much in all the Reformed confessions. In fact, I'm not aware of any Reformed church that permits images of God the Son incarnate, because any image that you created of the Son would not be the Son. It would be your imagination. You have no idea what Jesus looked like. And typically what happens when we make images of Christ, or try to, we end up representing ourselves, which of course is the essence of idolatry. And the other thing, of course, is that when you make an image, you're not representing his deity. Well, Jesus is one person with two natures. You're only ostensibly representing one nature, so you've separated the two natures, which makes you guilty of Nestorianism, which is one of the two great heresies in the doctrine of Christ. Eutychianism confuses the two natures. Nestorianism separates the two natures. And so you didn't mean to be a heretic. But this is why the Heidelcast is so important. That we can, keep you.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
We interrupt our program at the request of the White House. This is the emergency broadcast system. All normal broadcasting has been discontinued during this emergency.
No images. That's your warning. No images. No images. Right? That's because the image that you make, of course, isn't Jesus. And he hasn't authorized any images of himself, except for two, baptism and the Lord's Supper. And then that's it. We need to be satisfied with that. So I just want to get the basics out of the way. I think the way to answer this is to say that let's use a different category. How about taste? Or how about wisdom? It could be distasteful for people to affect a different voice when they're seeking to, portray God audibly. It's a temptation to do that, and it's probably not wise. It's probably not edifying. It's probably in bad taste. And so that is the way that I would go at that. And the same thing for people affecting a different voice to portray Jesus audibly. So I don't think I would invoke the second commandment here, but I would use those categories. And the second question that he has is concerning the Sabbath. Should we observe the Sabbath from midnight to midnight on Sunday, or from sundown Saturday to sundown Sunday? And my answer is, I don't care. I just want you to observe the spirit of the Sabbath. And again, I think the Heidelberg Catechism is very clear here. So I appreciate, people trying to be serious about their Sabbath observance. But this is an area, again, where we ought to, grant people wide latitude. So I would never answer that question, because it's not my business to tell you exactly, according to the calendar, how you ought to do it. Why do I say that? Well, Heidelberg, Lord's Day 38, question 103. What does God require in the fourth commandment? In the first place, God wills that the ministry of the gospel in schools, and Ursinus says that what they meant by that was theological seminaries, be maintained, and that I, especially on the day of rest, diligently attend church to learn the word of God, to use the holy sacraments, to call publicly upon the Lord, that's prayer, and to give Christian alms, that's the diaconal offering. In the second place, that all the days of my life I rest from my evil works, allow the Lord to work in me by his Spirit, and thus begin in this life the everlasting Sabbath. So we have a foretaste, we have an experience of the Christian Sabbath, a little bit day by day, and a little more on the Lord's Day, but we don't say anything about exactly when to observe the Sabbath, when it starts, when it ends. But we ought to make a good faith effort to set aside the Lord's Day, the first day of the week, the eighth day, if you will. So in the creation narrative, of course, it all culminates in the institution of the Sabbath. And that Sabbath was fulfilled by the death of Jesus, and he instituted, as it were, the Lord's Day, or the Christian Sabbath, by the power of his resurrection, by this great singular act of redemption, when the power of sin was broken and the new creation was inaugurated. And so that's why and you see in the New Testament, Revelation 1:10, the first day of the week being set aside or designated as the Lord's Day, and we long described it as the Christian Sabbath. And so we ought to rest, and we ought to worship, and we ought to give Christian alms, and we ought to do works of mercy. We ought to pray. Those are the things that we ought to be giving ourselves over to on the Christian Sabbath. But as to when it starts and when it stops, I'm going to leave that to you, your conscience, and your Christian liberty. Say, don't forget that we have a brand new series coming up on the weekly edition of the Heidelcast.
Feathers and all, the scriptures are enough.
I hope that interests you, and if it does, and you know somebody who might be interested in that series, please let them know and tell them that they can subscribe to the Heidelcast in any podcast app. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, there we will be.
Feathers and all, the scriptures are enough. Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights